Welcome back to the TheChowTimePod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from PsychHacks. Dr. Orion and Dr. Smith speak on the subject of male feminists, their thought process, their sexual strategy, and why they're looked at as weak men, and why a lot of us see them as weak men. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
You seem to have a particular bone to pick with male feminists, and I find that phenomenon to be interesting because it does sound from this conversation so far, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that it doesn't seem like feminism really advances the goals of men. Like it doesn't seem to make them happier. It doesn't seem to get them better dating or mating options. Why would a man become a feminist?
I think it's a great mating strategy because if you are that guy who can, it's like a dishonest signal in the animal kingdom where you have honest signals of strength, like a peacock's tail is an honest signal of virility because it takes resources to generate that tail. You can't fake it, but there are dishonest signals,
which would be muscles gains. It's hard to fake. Yes, there are steroids. Yes, there's stupid injections, but it still requires work. It requires you to generate those muscles, even with the steroids. Not condoning steroids.
Signals, and dishonest signals are lies. Essentially, they're the illusion of vigor and vitality.
Yeah, it's mind games. I feel like those are the two different ways, right? Like men that build themselves to attract women through visuals, and not just physicality, but through dressing, through, the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, the way, like, all of that counts as the physical
vitality without it really being there. And I think that for a male feminist, and I know some guys are going to hate me for this, and I have to say right out of the gate, I don't care.
Me neither.
For a man to adopt a feminist mindset, and we should probably define feminism at some point because we're talking about it as if we're working with a common definition. So let's define it in a minute. But for a man to take on a feminist mindset that is essentially anti-male, he's being sneaky. He's saying, look at me, ladies, I'm on your side. That guy over there, the guy that's working on the crane over there and actually building that building across the street, he's not on your side. He's a brute.
That's exactly how we fucking feel about them. We know this is what they're doing, right? But this is through psychologists' eyes and their thought process instead of our dumbass, like visuals of just seeing things. Not saying we're dumbasses, but these are professionals that are analyzing the data instead of just us analyzing our own data.
He probably voted for Trump. You don't want anything to do with that guy. I'm your guy. Yes. I'm writing these papers about how we all need to take better care of you. That's kind of a sneaky, dishonest signal.
It is.
Do you think these men are conscious that this might be a mating strategy?
They have to be.
I think some probably are to some degree. And I will give many of them the benefit of the doubt. Many men marinate, or they're marinating in this ideology from day one, and maybe they just can't see past it.
Yes.
Because they're getting it from kindergarten all the way through college. If they go to college, they're getting in their entertainment. They're getting it from Marvel comics. They're getting all the female empowerment stuff, which is fine. It's not about being
fucking Marvel.
Female. So maybe they just can't see past that. They've been told for decades that you're a good guy if you think this way, you're a bad guy if you think that way.
This is why it's hard for young men to believe men what's going on, because they've literally been trained one way their whole lives. The only way they're gonna freaking change most of the time is that they get red pilled by an incident from a woman. Right? That's when they're like, what the fuck is going on? Why do I keep failing in life? Why do I keep failing in relationships? Then they're going to seek out content that might fix it, and then they'll find red pill content. But you're right. They're 100% correct. It's hard to blame these men in a sense, because he's right. Like, subconsciously, we don't think they don't, not very many of them actually think that they're using this mating strategy in that way. They just think this is what I'm supposed to do.
That's really interesting. What's coming to mind is this classic season of Survivor, the TV show. I'm not a big fan of Survivor, but I think it's a fascinating game because it's almost impossible to win. And in this classic season, it was men versus women. And the way it generally works in the beginning is that there's all sorts of like physical challenges. And based on which side wins, the other side gets weakened. And I think through the first maybe month of the season, it was absolute massacre. I don't think the women had won a single challenge versus the men, and they were dwindling. And yet the winners of that season were all women. Like the top 3 finishers were women. And I was like, how did this happen? Because the women could not outcompete the men at a single event. The way it happened is that the women drove a wedge between the men.
Yeah.
The women began, they went to some of the lower status, the lower performing men in the other camp and said, look, you guys are going to beat us. But as soon as we're gone, who do you think is next?
This is true.
Do you think you're going to beat these alphas? So you might think you're winning right now and you feel really good, but there's no way that you're going to beat Mr. Chad over there. And so basically the women succeeded in negotiating a block with the lower status men at a strategic juncture of the season.
Simps? Oh man, this is like a really deep dive into how dating in society is working through this Survivor episode.
And that block succeeded in voting out the highest status alpha men who were the most threatening to both.
And that's what's happening right now. That's literally what's happening in society. The weaker men are siding with the women, are getting into positions to be able to take out the higher status men, the alphas. This is why a lot more laws, a lot more things are changing towards women, even though these men are in these positions.
Both the women and the lower status men. And then as soon as they were gone, all of the lower status men were the next ones to follow because the women just voted them out.
Yeah. Easy.
So that's fascinating.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, and
the sisterhood is stronger than the brotherhood, and the sisterhood knows how to use men very well. And men are just idiots. They're simps. They can only think what these women are telling them. They cannot strategize further ahead, and they are weak. They knew they cannot compete in the strength market, in the physical market, so they had to use underhand tactics. And when you use underhand tactics, you get fucked over too.
The differences between the two camps were so striking. The men's camp was running like clockwork. They had fire, they had shelter, they were well fed. The women were shivering and wet and hungry.
And yet they still won.
They didn't have the survivor skills to like, they were barely hanging on at some point. They resorted to a desperate strategy, but it worked. And I think one of the, so they used fear to motivate the lower status men against the higher status men. But
simps, the fear of not getting any pussy, a fear of not getting any attention makes these simps fall in line.
I think they also use the prospect of, I think they seduce them a little bit too.
Uh-huh. So what the women lacked in physical capability to master the environment, the men lacked in psychological ability to recognize when
they were getting played
on.
This is why you never want to argue with women like that, and you just can't win. They're built for it. They were made for it. We're made to punch things and build things and fuck shit up. That's what we were made for. We weren't made to talk and like manipulate people. We're just made to, you go do that? Yeah, I'll go do that. You know, and that's it. Simple men.
And manipulated.
Yeah, those lower status men were definitely, I mean, it was very fascinating because one of the strategies was to play the damsel in distress, and the women would come over to the men's camp and say,
"Oh, it works very well. When a woman cries in public, we see it. All the simps come up. I'm like, oh, are you okay? Oh, what did you do to her? Or why did you make her cry? Blah, 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 blah." Even though if she just cried on her own and we didn't do anything. There's plenty of men out there that will come to the damsel in distress and not even question what's going on. They just see a woman crying. They automatically assess that you did something to make her cry.
"Oh, we're so cold. You guys are so strong, and you know all about fire. Like, couldn't you help us? Couldn't you just spare the fire? It costs you nothing." It's like really kind of, and they're the competitors in this season of Survivor. It's men versus women. So can you imagine a rival pulling that card in like a sporting match or something like that?
You would get destroyed.
It'd be kind of ridiculous. But yes, women are generally much more adept at, let's say, emotional and psychological warfare than men. I made an episode about this, that if we had a no holds barred bar brawl between a man and a woman, it would be no contest. I mean, the vast majority of men would just mop the floor with women, which is why we don't do that. It just seems like it's too unfair of a fight. And to be fair, that's generally not how fighting occurs in most relationships. And the vast majority of relationships, it's not a physical fight. It's an emotional or a verbal argument. And the vast majority of men are completely outmatched, completely outclassed by women.
Yeah.
They don't know how to argue like women do. They don't know how to use words to hurt in the same way that women do.
This is true. I don't think I've ever really argued to hurt someone. I swear to God, women do argue just to hurt.
And that leaves them at a significant disadvantage. So I think that it's really important for men to kind of, I mean, there's this trend in society to like not be a harmless man.
Yeah.
Like you need to have strength. You need to have skills. And a competent, strong man is
competent. That's what I like.
It's not a harmless man. He could cause harm. He could also, he also has the power to do good.
Yes.
It's really the same power. You know what I'm saying? You have to have power one way or the other. And I think it behooves a lot of men to learn some of the tricks of the trade when it comes to women, so that they kind of know how to hold themselves in a fight. Just like I think it makes sense for guys to know how to like take a punch or throw a punch. It makes sense.
I say this all the time. You need to know how to fight. Why? Because it gives you a certain confidence if you didn't know. That's why you go to the gym. Because you have muscles. You're working out. You're physically fit. You have a little bit more confidence in you. It's not just for the looks. It's the confidence. When you got muscles and you're gaining, you're like, damn, I can fucking take on the world. And that's how confident people are. Remember, they do all these small little things to get their confidence up.
It's for guys to know how to recognize emotional manipulation.
How's that, Chow? People like to like make fun of Red Pill and, like say that we just watch women, fail and talk shit all the time. And it's just like, they have no clue how much men have to analyze the words of women and how different scenarios work for us to fully understand how they are battling against us. If you do not see enough of this content, you would not be able to argue. You would not be able to even still push back on most women unless you watch a good amount of these types of content. It is what it is. You just gotta learn how women communicate. And women know how we communicate. They just completely ignore it. And they know that their communication method trumps ours because most men are gonna keel to those emotions. Please like and subscribe down below. I really appreciate that. And I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.